Why you must pray while traveling back this January to school. The unseen warning happened 2 weeks before Christmas. John, a successful businessman, and his wife Ngozi were preparing for a family trip to their village. The holiday season was always a time for family reunion, but this year something felt off. Ngozi, sensing an unease she couldn't quite explain, asked John to pray before the trip. "John, please, I feel like we need to pray, especially with everything that's been going on. You know how important prayer is, especially before we travel," she said, her voice laced with concern. John, always dismissive of her constant spiritual reminders, rolled his eyes. "Ngozi, you always do this. There's no need for all this prayer. We've got everything planned and nothing bad is going to happen. We don't need to worry. Besides, God's got us covered," he said, brushing her off. His impatience was palpable and he couldn't understand why she was so worried. Unbeknownst to him, deep in the forest of their village, his stepmother, Mama Amaka, was brewing something far more sinister. Bitter and envious of John's success, she wanted nothing more than to destroy him and his family. For years, she had plotted and schemed in silence, but this Christmas, her jealousy would reach its peak. In the dark corners of her hut, she met with a group of witches, each more wicked than the last. "He's become too proud. I will make him regret it," she hissed. Clutching one of John's old shirts in her hands, "Take this and ensure his family never makes it to their destination alive." With dark incantations, the witches prepared a curse powerful, so powerful enough to bring destruction. The mysterious encounter that morning of their journey arrived, but Ngozi's worries persisted. As John started the car, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She tried again to convince him to pray. "Please, John, let's just take a moment to pray. That's all I'm asking for. Not too much, is it? Just a short prayer for safety," she pleaded. But John, too excited about the holiday, snapped, "I am not going to keep repeating myself. We have already planned everything. Let's just go," he insisted. As they drove out of the city, a strange woman suddenly appeared by the side of the road, waving them down. Her face was partially covered by a tattered scarf, but there was an undeniable aura of mystery around her. She approached the car, her eyes locking with John's. "You must pray before you travel," she said in a low, urgent voice. "There is danger ahead, and your journey is cursed." John, visibly annoyed, rolled down his window just enough to reply, "Don't you have better things to do? We are not interested in superstitions," he said harshly, dismissing the woman with a wave of his hand. But she remained unmoved. "Your pride will be your downfall," she said cryptically. Before John could respond, she turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving him with an unsettling feeling. Despite the woman's warning, John continued on, ignoring his wife's unease. But as they neared the outskirts of the city, their car suddenly began to sputter. "What the heck is going on with this car?" John cursed, slamming his hand against the steering wheel. He tried to restart the engine, but it was no use. The car came to a halt in the middle of a deserted road. "Why is this happening now? We were fine just a minute ago," John muttered angrily. Ngozi, on the other hand, remained calm. She quietly reached for her phone, but the signal was weak. After several attempts, she sighed and said, "John, maybe this is a sign. We should really pray before we go any further." John, growing more frustrated, muttered, "We don't have time for this. I am not going to waste another minute." He looked around and spotted a bus station in the distance. "Let's just take a bus. We'll make it there quicker anyway." Despite her reservations, Ngozi agreed, although she continued to pray silently under her breath. The long-distance bus they boarded was packed, with passengers squeezing in wherever they could find space. As they sat down, John glanced at Ngozi, still lost in her thoughts. "You're still worried, aren't you?" he asked, his voice tinged with annoyance. "This is just a trip. Nothing is going to happen." Ngozi nodded, but remained silent, clutching her handbag tightly. I'm just praying for our safety, that's all," she whispered. But what John didn't know was that the curse Mama Amaka had cast on them was already in motion. The witches had tampered with the bus's brakes, ensuring that no matter what, disaster would strike. Hours into the journey, the air inside the bus grew thick with tension. The sound of the engine struggled as the bus ascended a steep hill. Suddenly, the driver's voice cracked over the intercom. "Something's wrong with the brakes. I can't stop this bus." Panic erupted as the bus veered uncontrollably towards a massive tanker ahead. John's heart raced as the bus flew forward at breakneck speed. The passengers screamed and chaos spread through the vehicle. "What's happening?" someone shouted. John's grip tightened on the armrest, but he was frozen with fear. Ngozi's voice broke through the panic. "Lord, protect us," she cried, her prayers rising above the chaos. Her voice was firm, powerful, as if she was calling upon something greater than the forces at play. As the bus continued carrying towards the tanker, something inexplicable happened. Just moments before the collision, the bus seemed to slow down on its own. The impact was still violent, but the destruction wasn't as devastating as it should have been. The bus slammed into the tanker, but it didn't explode, and the passengers were thrown from their seats rather than crushed. When John regained consciousness, everything was disorienting. The hospital room was sterile, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. His body ached all over, but it was the emptiness in his legs that consumed him. No, my legs!" he screamed, struggling to move. His body refused to respond. Ngozi was sitting by his side, calm despite the chaos. "John, we are alive. That's what matters," she whispered softly, taking his hand. John's eyes were wide with disbelief. "What happened? Why can't I feel my legs?" The old woman, the one who had warned them, entered the room. Her presence was calm yet imposing. She walked to John's bedside and sat down. "You have much to learn," she said gently. "Your pride nearly cost you everything. Your stepmother, Mama Amaka, hired the witches. She cursed your journey, put your wife's faith and prayers at peace. But your wife's faith and prayers saved you all." John's mind spun. His stepmother's jealousy had pushed her to such extremes? He struggled to comprehend it. But my legs, he whispered. The cost of ignoring spiritual warnings is steep, the old woman replied, her voice tinged with sadness. Your wife's prayers protected your family, but the price of your arrogance was high. You lost your legs, but you still have your life, and that is a gift. In the weeks that followed, John's physical recovery was slow. He couldn't deny the depth of pain, not just in his body, but in his soul. He had been too proud, too dismissive of the very thing that could have saved him, his wife's faith. He had taken her prayers for granted, not realizing the strength they held. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, John looked out the window of his hospital room. The weight of everything he had learned was settling in. He had nearly lost everything: his family, his legs, his life, because he had ignored the warnings of his wife. That Christmas, instead of celebrating as he planned, John chose to focus on healing, not just physically, but spiritually. He recognized and reconciled with his wife Ngozi, acknowledging that her faith was what had protected them. He vowed never again to mock prayers, to lead his family in faith and gratitude, and to never forget the lessons he had learned. As he looked out the window, he silently thanked God for his life, for the gift of prayer, and for the second chance he had been given. And as the Christmas bells rang in the distance, he knew that his life would never remain the same again. Thank you so much, subscribers. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. If you have stayed up to the end, I really want to appreciate you. Do well to subscribe if you haven't hit the subscribe button. To all my returning subscribers, I say thank you so much and I love you all. Do well to hit on the notification bell so that you are aware when next I will be posting more interesting stories like this. Also, do not forget to leave a comment on how the story is and what you learned from the story. Until next time, I love you and